kids. I want to thank my wife, my long-suffering wife, who's put up with me all these years while I've been working on this book. Thank Gregory, Akeem, and Dim for joining with me in this endeavor. We're trying something very different here, which is the serialization of the book, the e-serialization. Does my sound good?
No, better.
David, good?
There you go.
Okay, better. All right. So yeah, I've always been fascinated with this whole idea of serializing books and serializing TV shows and developing and creating an audience that way. So after I read, we'll open it up and talk a little bit more about that and about the war on drugs and how this book and what's happening in our country as far as this war is concerned. So this is the first chapter that I'm going to read, and it's called Northern Exposure. It takes place in Phillips, Maine in April of 1980. Dawn comes early this time of year, particularly up here in the North Country. It's 4 in the morning, bright stars still visible in deep velvet skies tinged crimson along the eastern horizon. Red sky in morning, smugglers take warning. The GMC dually rumbles into motion down the gravel driveway. I love this truck. With the plush, roomy crew cab, it's like driving along the road in your living room. I always buy American, patriot that I am, and my motto is, when in doubt, buy a truck. Hit the play button on the stereo. Neil Young's Powderfinger. Look out, mama, there's a red boat coming up the river. Blast from 6 speakers. I substitute my own lyrics. Look out, mama, there's a big bird coming up the river. Or maybe not. You never know how real anything is in this business. Be prepared, that's the Boy Scout motto. Not that I was ever a Boy Scout. Got kicked out of the Cub Scouts. The pack leader was a pervert and I called him on it. None of the adults believed me. Still, my Yankee Wass work ethic, drilled into me by my maternal grandmother, Ethel Lowell Burnham, Baba we used to call her, demands that I do my job to the utmost of my ability, even if everyone around me is fucking up. Anything worth doing, Baba would tell me, is worth doing right. And she was always right. Lived long enough to know. It's a short drive from the farm down Wheeler Hill and along Toothaker Pond Road to the river. My big white Alsatian shepherd, Karamazov, doesn't like rock music as much as I do. He sticks his head out the window and lets the soft spring air fold back his ears. I need the music loud. Most people in this part of the world are still asleep, and I've already taken a couple of hits off the oily, resin-soaked roach I left in the ashtray on the kitchen table back at the farm. To say that I'm high and nervous doesn't come close to describing how I feel. I'm plagued by fear, terrified, freaked the fuck out, just the way I like it. Not simply fear of arrest, though that is always with me. Not fear of failure either. No, it's a deep-seated dread that everything they have always said about me is true. You're a bad kid, Ricky Stratton, a troublemaker, a juvenile delinquent. You may even be a sociopath, and that shit you smoke, that music you listen to is only going to make you worse. They being the authorities, adults, teachers, principals, probation officers, cops, judges and shrinks, lawyers. My big fear is that I am proving them right. I'm a failure at everything except crime. The only way I know to soothe this runaway fear is to keep assuring myself they are wrong and what I am doing is right. My ground crew is bivouacked at the lodge, set on a hill beside a trout pond a stone's throw from the river. Who would have expected a place like this exists only a few miles down the road from the horse farm I own with the novelist Norman Mailer? Yes, that Mailer, the enfant terrible of the American literature scene, who lately has been calling himself Aquarius. One could argue it's all his fault. When I read his work in college, I sensed he was writing about me. Mailer bought the farm with Channing Godfrey, a former Kennedy speechwriter and whiz kid who quit the Johnson administration over the Vietnam War. That was 10 years ago. They paid 20 grand for the house, ramshackle barn, and 160 acres of land on the side of a rocky hill with a view of Mount Blue across the valley. I was living in Provincetown, Massachusetts with Aeneas, my wife, renovating a home, waiting for a load. There I met and became friends with Mailer. He heard I had access to good weed. Mailer and Gottfried hired me to fix up the farm. When I began to make serious money, I bought them out. My mouth is cotton dry from nerves and reefer. There is a spring beside the private road that leads into the lodge. I stop the dually. Karamazov and I get out. He laps up the water with his long pink tongue, and I fill a jug, take several cool swallows to soothe my throat and drown the butterflies in my belly. This is the best water I've ever tasted, gurgling up from deep in the ground, fresh, clean, full of minerals, and uncontaminated by human technology. It's Mother Earth offering up her vital liquid to wash clean the stain of civilization. The lodge was vacant and run down when we took it over. A relative by marriage, a fellow scammer, I call him by his nickname, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, a pilot, discovered this place while he was out trail riding on a motorcycle. He came back to the farm and said, "You'll never guess what I found down by the river." Local lore has it that the lodge and airstrip were built in the 1940s by John Fox, a self-made millionaire from South Boston, former owner of the long-defunct Boston Post newspaper. Fox was a friend and business partner of Joseph P. Kennedy, father of JFK. Gloria Swanson supposedly stayed at the lodge occasionally while she was having her affair with Joe Kennedy. At one point, Fox owned 7,000 acres of land in this valley. He carved out a mile-long airstrip in the woods beside the river so he could fly up from Boston on weekends. Across the river, he built a 14-room lodge and a spring-fed pond he stocked with trout. When we discovered the place, it was owned by a shady New Jersey developer who had fallen on hard times and wanted to sell. My partners and I bought the property in the name of a company that is wholly owned by a shell offshore corporation. Amasconti Lodge and Flying Club, we call it, named after the Native American tribe that hunted these woods before the white man came. I suffer from agoromania, an uncontrollable urge to acquire real estate. Property, land, homes, buildings, as if anyone can really own any part of God's creation. We lease it at best, but it gives me some assurance that I actually exist. I bought a 6,000 acre ranch in the Texas Hill Country, where I stride around the boundary like James Dean and Giant and lie to myself. This is mine, knowing it was all paid for with black market money, knowing the IRS is already hot on my trail, poised to take it all away. It's a fool's paradise I live in, but I tell myself it beats living a life of quiet desperation. The ground crew for this operation consists of 2 ex-Marines, Vietnam vets. Father Flaherty, who looks like a priest, got his nickname while driving a motorhome we bought from a Texas outfit called Global Evangelism Television. We left the logo, a picture of a camera and a cross, painted on the outside of the motorhome, and posed as evangelists while transporting loads of reefer from the ranch in Texas. Father Flaherty's partner has been working with me for years. I call him JD, or Jimmy D. He's as loyal as Karamazov, but with some strictly human habits that are in evidence as I walk into the room of the lodge. Empty bottles of tequila, beer bottles, a Ziploc bag of weed, roaches, and cigarette butts. JD got smashed in the mouth with a rifle butt during a fight with a fellow Marine, and he's never bothered to have his front teeth replaced. He's passed out on the sofa, though there are plenty of bedrooms upstairs. Karamazov pads over and nuzzles him with his wet snout. "Rise and shine," I say when JD rolls over and looks up. He grunts in response. Jimmy D and Father Flaherty have enlisted a couple of rookie helpers. One is a local guy, a carpenter who did much of the finish work at the farm and has been renovating the lodge. Call him Mild Bill. He's quiet, bearded, looks like Abraham Lincoln. The other guy is JD's old lady's brother, nicknamed Dangerous Dan, who's been in and out of jail a few times but is known to hold his mud. The fifth wheel is Cal, a big, laid-back dude from San Diego who came with the scam. He works for a rich neophyte dope dealer out of Kansas City who is attempting his first importation, 5 tons of primo Colombian reefer. The men load into 2 big Ryder box trucks. We caravan across the bridge and along the road beside the town dump to the airstrip. Father Flaherty has set up a VH1, a VHF, AM ground-to-air radio in the log cabin beside the runway. The truck's parked midfield beside the windsock, hanging limp in the early morning lull. JD and I get out and walk the length of the field. Karamazov bounds along beside us, where he takes off into the woods in pursuit of deer. It's soft, I say as my boots sink into the sod. Way soft. I don't know about this. Jimmy D grunts in response, flicks the butt of a camel into the wet grass. He has never had much belief in the reality of this trip. The strip is situated beside a long bend in the river, which makes it easy to spot from the air, and it is positioned to take advantage of prevailing winds. But it's mushy after the spring thaw, after the winter's thaw and the spring rains. We've been using a single-engine Cessna to smuggle small loads of weed and hash to our northern neighbors. The Canadian border is only 50 miles by air. We can deliver a 300 or 400 pound load into Quebec, drop it off, and be back with a bag full of money in a couple of hours and on one tank of fuel. On any given day, I might make 10 grand before lunch. Not bad if you can get the merchandise. That's always the problem in this business. Merchandise. Supply, also known as product. America consumes upwards of 10 tons of weed a day. Canada smokes another 2 tons of pot a day and at least a half a ton of hash. It's an importer's bonanza. With a 5,000-foot airstrip in a state that has a long coastline pocketed with deep-water coves and a sparsely populated foreign border, we are well situated in a smuggler's paradise. During Prohibition, rum runners made use of these same routes and methods. I have an air freight catch at Logan Airport in Boston, known in the trade as a patch, where we smuggle in regular shipments of high-quality hashish from Lebanon. At the ranch in Texas, we land plane loads of Mexican and Jamaican reefer, ship it back east in motorhomes and horse trailers for distribution in New York, Boston, Toronto, and Montreal. Meanwhile, my partners and I are putting together a mega load of hash, the mother load that will make us all seriously wealthy. The past few weeks have been one of those insane periods in this business. It's either feast or famine. At times, we may be sitting around for months on end waiting to bring in a load that never materializes, or 3 trips happen at once. We sometimes subcontract loads for scammers who need our services. A smuggler named Jimmy Chagra, a heavyweight Lebanese American out of El Paso, Texas, has a Panamanian freighter loaded with 30 tons of Colombian pot off the Maine coast. Chagra's offload fell apart after the ship had already set sail. For the past 10 days, I've been organizing lobstermen and fishing boats, lining up tractor trailers and drivers, renting stash houses, hiring people to sit on the load. For this, Chagra has agreed to pay me $5 a pound. Before the offload goes down, I get a visit from a pilot I call by his radio handle, Yogi Bear. He shows up at the farm with the Kansas City Kid, a gentle, good-looking greenhorn dope dealer in his 20s, feeling the first flush of free money. Yogi looks like his nickname. He's big and burly with a pot belly, a beard, and bushy black hair. These guys claim they have a plane, a DC-6 they bought in Kansas. The reefer is somewhere on the Guajira Peninsula in Colombia. Yogi Bear is going to fly the weed in using the DC-6. What they don't have is a place to land the load. It's hard to tell how serious this trip is at the time of their visit. These guys are party animals. Yogi is a good pilot, but smuggling is a sideline. He's a gadget freak who runs a successful business setting up live video feeds for high-profile events. He informs me this trip has to happen quickly, as he's preparing to shoot some big beauty contest in Atlanta, maybe even the Miss America pageant. So he only has a small window of opportunity in which to make this happen. I get the feeling Yogi may be trying to move the Kansas City Kid for some down payment money. We ride down in my 4-wheel drive pickup and take a look at the strip. Yogi doesn't even get out of the truck. After we drive the length of the field, clock it at just over a mile, he pronounces it perfect. I warn him that even though there is a deep gravel base under the sod surface and drainage into the river is adequate, the field can be soft this time of year. We've never landed anything close to the size and weight of a DC-6 carrying a 10,000 pounds of weed and who knows how much fuel on this field. Yogi says, don't worry about it, we'll be fine. The kid from Kansas City wants to know if I can supply a ground crew and trucks to deliver the weed to his distributors in Chicago. Sure, I say, for a fee. We work out the deal over shots of tequila, joints, and lines of coke. Kansas City gives me 50 grand in cash, tells me his man Cal will show up in a week or so with more money and a timetable. We party into the wee hours, they split the next day. I hear nothing for a week. Meanwhile, I'm meeting with Chagra's people to facilitate the offload. I've almost forgotten about Yogi and his pal when I get a call from Kansas City. I make the 15-minute drive from the farm to the nearest payphone and call back. My man is checked into room 122 at the Holiday Inn in Augusta, Kansas City tells me. In his room at the hotel, Cal has got more money and a brand new ground-to-air radio he has no idea how to operate. He tells me Yogi is supposedly in Santa Marta, but no one has heard from him for a few days. There is some concern he may have split with the money he was supposed to give the Colombians for the pot. This whole scheme seems harebrained to me, but I'm committed. Besides, this is what turns me on, a new adventure. I call in JD and Father Flaherty, who've been staying on the coast, helping set up the offload. Father Flaherty figures out how to operate the radio. We hire the rest of the ground crew, rent trucks, and wait. Now it's on, or not. No one seems to know for sure. Communication with Colombia has been sketchy. Yogi is either in the Guajira with the load ready to go, or he is MIA with the money. We have been preoccupied with the Panamanian freighter offload, which I know for certain is happening. Big Cal, who has been staying at the Holiday Inn in Augusta, drives over to the farm and tells me the DC-6 left Colombia and will be here at dawn. At least, that is what he heard from his friend in Kansas City. There are parts of the field where the gravel has been exposed that feel pretty solid. If Yogi follows the river and comes in low over the trees near the east end of the field and drops in tight, he should be all right. And he'll be light going out, so that shouldn't be a problem. Father Flaherty is monitoring the radio. Everyone is tense. As the sun breaks in the east, low clouds scud in over the mountains. The wind is light right down the runway. To the north, a darker mass of clouds looks ominous. There is an undercurrent of feeling this whole thing may be a fool's errand. JD is convinced Yogi Bear scammed the Kansas City kid, and in a couple of hours we'll drive out of here empty and pissed. Hey, Jefe! Father Flaherty shouts, comes running from the log cabin. We have radio contact. Karamazov, I call the dog as we lope down the field. The last thing I want is for him to get hit by an airplane. This is Yogi Bear to Groundhog. Do you read me, Groundhog? This is Groundhog. We read you loud and clear, Yogi. Father Flaherty speaks into the transmitter. He looks up at me and grins. Over the crackle of static, Yogi says, can you see your shadow? Father Flaherty gives me a puzzled look. What the fuck does that mean? Even before I can answer, I hear the distant drone of 4 powerful Pratt & Whitney engines becoming louder by the second. Now we are all skittish with the excitement that comes from imminent danger. We run out to the strip. I tell the drivers to start their engines. After a moment, before we can see the plane, the roar of the engines is impossibly loud. The trees seem to shake and the hills vibrate with noise. The air is dense with sound, a sound foreign to these parts. As foreign as the monstrous machine descends rapidly into this peaceful valley. In my mind, I see farmers and woodmen all over Franklin County waking up and wondering if it's time to head for the air raid shelters. The Russians are coming, but there is no time to think, no time to imagine what the locals might be thinking. For there is the plane coming in loud, coming in huge and hot, landing like a giant fat-winged locust chewing up the scenery. I suddenly realize how foolish, how insane it is to have attempted to bring in a 50,000-pound behemoth with a 10,000-pound payload to Earth on this patchy sod and gravel field. Yogi Bear is an expert STOL, short takeoff and landing pilot, but he's either asleep at the yoke or the strip comes up too fast for him because he overshoots the end of the runway, drops hard, touches down too far into the field. I'm afraid he's going to crash into the trees at the far end of the strip. The rear wheels hit ground, the nose levers forward, and the front gear digs into the sod like the blade of a plow. Grass and mud sprout in ribbons, clogging the gear, causing the plane to buck and then dive and belly flop with a screeching metallic wail heard over the scream of the reversing engines. Yogi kills the engines as the propeller blades hit the ground and fling grass and dirt in the air like shit hitting the fan. The plane is skidding now, burrowing its nose along the ground like a dog sniffing for scent. The rear gear folds under. The plane is wheelless, landing more like a seaplane. I catch a glimpse of Yogi in the cockpit as the plane slides by. He appears remarkably composed, working the controls, trying to slow the plane before he hits the trees. We watch dumbfounded, helpless, fascinated. One wingtip strikes ground. The plane twists on its axis, does an about face, slides closer to the end of the runway and the riverbank. Now I'm afraid it's going to slip into the river or burst into flames. The shriek of metal on gravel is like the cry of a wounded beast. The other wing tip smacks into a tree and topples it like a fell swoop of an axe. Then, silence. The six is lying there at the tree line, its tail teetering on the river's edge, looking like nothing so much as a giant bird of prey shot from the sky. I hear the rapid patter of footfalls and look over to see the two rookie helpers running off into the woods. "Whoa, where the fuck are you going?" JD shouts. "Let's get this bird unloaded." The cockpit door pops open. Yogi Bear, dressed for the occasion in a khaki jumpsuit and safari vest, hops out, followed by his terrified Colombian co-pilot. "I hurt my knee," Yogi says, limping over to me. "Get me out of here. I've got an appointment in Atlanta." "What am I supposed to do with that?" I say, indicating the crashed plane. Yogi shrugs, cracks a smile and says, "Turn it into a disco."